So I think it goes without saying that Breaking Bad is a show that's had its fair share of iconic scenes.
I am the one who knocks.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Say my name.
My name is Skyler White, yo. My husband is Walter White, yo.
And for the most part, all these moments in the show's history are treated with reverence. Go on YouTube and you'll find no shortage of video essays meticulously breaking down the themes, acting, or writing of any one of them. But I think there's one scene out there that is just as iconic, just as important, and just as layered as its siblings, but constantly gets overlooked when people talk about some of the best moments from the series. Now, to some of you, a mini video essay just about what is arguably one of the most hated scenes in all of Breaking Bad is definitely an odd choice. But I will stand by the fact that I think this moment is one of the most defining and misunderstood scenes in all of Breaking Bad. So in this video, I want to break down what exactly is happening here, what context might be missing, and how I think people who say they hate this scene might have actually come to that conclusion, and ultimately why I think they're wrong. So without further ado, let's begin with why Breaking Bad's I Fuck Ted scene is secretly brilliant.
Ted Bennick, you cannot be serious. That guy is a joke.
To fully begin understanding I.F.T, or I.F.T as I will be referring to it in the rest of this video, we also need to look at the scenes that immediately preceded it and how they all fit together within the larger Breaking Bad narrative. So starting from the end of the season 2 finale titled ABQ, Walt and Skyler are now separated, having done so upon Skyler's discovery that Walt has been lying to her about Gretchen and Elliot covering Walt's medical bills for his ongoing cancer treatment. Later, Skyler shows up to Walt's apartment with divorce papers. Walt, angry at how sudden this all feels, is cut off by Skyler telling him she's figured out he's a drug dealer, to which Walt corrects her to tell her he's actually a drug manufacturer, thus epically owning her. She leaves, disgusted, and still insisting on a divorce. Walt, angered by this, decides that he's had enough and breaks back into the house after Skyler changes the locks, now refusing to leave or sign off on the divorce period. So now that we know where everyone stands going into this episode, it's time to hone in more specifically on the events that take place in the Crown Jewel itself. The episode hits the ground running with Skyler demanding that Walt leave immediately after discovering his break-in, with Walt refusing. Skyler tells him that if he doesn't leave immediately, she will call the police. Walt calls her bluff. After the cops tell Skyler there's no legal basis to remove Walt from the home, Skyler begins looking for any way out, consulting her lawyer, even refusing to interact with Walt, which led to this really funny moment where she doesn't open the bathroom for him, so he has to pee in the sink, all leading to a crescendo in what I think is one of the most important conversations in Breaking Bad history. A conversation that is crucial for understanding why Skyler did what she did, what this means for Walt, and how this irreversibly changed the relationship these two characters have with each other for the rest of this series.
Skyler, that money is for this roof over your head. The mortgage that you are not going to be able to afford on a part-time bookkeeper's salary when I'm gone. Skyler, all that I've done, all the sacrifices that I have made for this family, all of it will be for nothing if you don't accept what I've earned.
So immediately the stakes here are clear. Skyler doesn't take the money, she is dooming her family. The same family that we, as an audience, spent 2 whole seasons watching Walt constantly put his life on the line to support. If Skyler doesn't take this money, it not only rejects all the hard work Walter put into making it, but by extension all the hard work that we, as the audience, have put into experiencing it. Unlike Skyler, we've seen how the sausage gets made here. We've seen every time Walt and Jesse were close to dying or getting caught. We've seen everything. This is not just Walt's story, it's ours as well. So by virtue of the relationship we've built with Walt, this bag of money he is now presenting to Skyler doesn't just belong to him. In a way, it also belongs to us. And so it is through this lens that you can begin to understand the sentiment for why people hated the I.F.T scene so much. This was a profound betrayal, one that Walt, according to us, simply did not deserve. One that we didn't deserve. But therein lies the problem. See, the main reason we root for Walt in the first place is because we have spent so long identifying with him that we've never actually taken a step back and treated him as just another character in the story. To us, Walt not only serves as the protagonist, but also as the audience surrogate at the start of the series. It is only when we stop viewing Walter this way that we can really begin to view him and his actions more critically. The description I gave earlier and its subsequent justifications were all written from Walt's and the audience's perspective. They sounded true because that is how Walt views the situation himself, and so do we by virtue of this relationship. So here's the big question. What does the scene look like when it's not from Walt's perspective? See, when you take a closer look at at the scene, you'll notice something odd about what Walt's saying here. When Walt asks her to accept the money, the part that he doesn't say out loud is that by accepting the money, she has to accept him back into her life, in the lives of her family, not understanding the reason she doesn't want to accept the money in the first place. A reason that a lot of people tend to forget when viewing the scene is that this is drug money, and worse yet, we as the audience know it is blood money. Skyler doesn't want the money because when she looks at the bag, she doesn't see Walt's hard work, she sees the violence, the misery, the darkness that was committed to get that bag at her feet. This isn't the result of Walt's hard work, something he had attained to secure his family's future as he'd like her to believe. No, what this bag is, really, are all of Walt's sins. Every person he'd ever killed either directly or indirectly, every life the meth he cooked has destroyed, hell, even just the danger he attracts by being in the game are all additional strings that come with accepting Walt's money. Furthermore, if the moral argument isn't enough to convince you, then there's an even more pragmatic reason Skyler doesn't accept the money. Walt's sins are crimes. I know this may sound obvious, but really think about it. If Skyler accepts Walt's money, then by extension, she is also complicit in his crimes. She now knows where his money comes from, and it's not from a good place. As long as Walter continues to cook and that bag of cash grows larger, so too does Skyler's plausible deniability. The last reason for Skyler not wanting to accept this money is the nature of Walt's work. We as the audience know better than anyone. The people Walt works for are dangerous. So what if they come after him, or worse, the family? It would directly put their children and Skyler in harm's way, and if something happens to the children, then taking the money will have ultimately been for nothing. To Skyler, Walt isn't asking her to accept the money, he's asking her to be his accomplice. And the thing is, Walt knows this. He isn't giving Skyler a choice, he isn't actually pleading with her. This is an ultimatum disguised as begging. It's either you take this money and become my accomplice, or you don't take this money and our kids will be left with nothing while you had the power to stop it. This puts Skyler in an absolutely impossible situation, a position wherein whatever she chooses will have the same result. Walt will own her. Walter doesn't come out and say it because he still has a delusion that once Skyler accepts the money, they can go back to the way things were, this time with the added bonus of having Skyler know that he is the one that earned the money, something that has been a constant thorn in Walt's pride since the beginning of the series.
It cannot be blind luck or some imaginary relative who saves us. No, I earned that money. Me!
Skyler, however, sees through this deception and makes a decision. And it is at this point, I think, that we can finally begin to understand the brilliance of Skyler, having read between the lines of Walt's ultimatum, decided to do what he did when she called the police. She called his bluff. When Skyler tells Walt, "I fucked Ted," it's meant to be both a sobering reality check and an act of protest against Walt, a rejection of the terms of his ultimatum and the premise it's based on. If Walt refused to see that, then there was simply no going back to the way things were. What he did was a complete betrayal of her trust. He is a stranger to her, one that lied for months, has admitted to committing unspeakable acts, and more than anything is now putting his family in danger by refusing to see any fault in his actions. Worse yet, you refuse to understand how and why Skyler feels this way, even going as far as accusing her of punishing him for wanting a divorce.
Why are you even thinking this way? Is it to punish me?
I am not punishing you, Walt.
This is punitive, is what this is.
One of the most fascinating things about this episode that doesn't get talked about nearly enough is how Walt emotionally manipulates Skyler and Walt Jr. From the moment Walt and Skyler first interact, Walter begins speaking to Skyler with a calm hostility, refusing to leave, calling her bluff about the police, all the while doing so in front of Walter Jr. Walt didn't make Flynn go into a different room, he wants him to see this. Ironically, this false image of the caring, terminally ill family man who's been persecuted for seemingly no reason by his hostile wife is not only the image that Walt is selling to his son, the police, but also to us. Here, we are no longer Walt's surrogates. We are his patsies. In the scene itself, we see Walter continue to keep up this act when he invites one of Walt Jr.'s friends, Lewis, over for dinner without telling Skyler. Now, on the surface, he tells Skyler that the reason he invites Lewis over is to thank him for driving Walt Jr. to school while they were away. However, this is just as easily another manipulation tactic on Walter's part. Having Lewis over for dinner without telling Skyler puts her in the position of either accepting it or rejecting it, where if she accepts it, then it seems like everything is going fine and everything went back to the way it was. However, if Skyler rejects Lewis coming over for dinner and tells him to leave, then she is once again antagonized by Walt Jr. It's here in this conversation in the kitchen that we notice a few things. Namely, if you listen to the words he actually says to Skyler, you'll notice that there's a malicious undertone to the words he's saying.
I hope you don't mind. I invited Lewis to stay for dinner tonight. You know, as a thank you for driving Walter Jr. to school for us.
Can you just give me a ride to school?
I'll take you to school.
Yeah, no. I'm ready now.
Flynn, I'm taking you to school.
Kind of absent, I tell you. Lois really pitched in.
What I find interesting about this scene is that Walt didn't even give her the courtesy of waiting for her decision. By inviting Lewis over, it is essentially an act of checkmate. He is telling her that the decision has already been made, and she will accept him back. Everything will go back to normal. And it is because of this stubbornness that we can now fully appreciate what Skyler was trying to communicate by sleeping with Ted. Because what Walt's speech actually gave away more than anything is that he's completely selfish. And for him, he never saw a problem with cooking meth in the same way Skyler now doesn't see a problem with sleeping with Ted to spite him. That strangely enough, this is the only way to get Walt to understand how she feels, to be on the same page. Sleeping with Ted is his drug money. He can't look past it, he can't bury it, and there's no going back from it. Skyler gives him a taste of his own medicine. Skyler ultimately chooses to take the money as to A, not alienate Walter from his kids, but B, also makes it clear that she is doing so under her terms. It is her throwing down the gauntlet, saying that if this is the game he wants to play, then she can play it too. And if she has to be okay with the money, then he has to be okay with Ted. She was not going to be his pawn. For this brief moment, Skyler beat Walt at his own game, and I honestly think that's just wonderful. And hopefully now you too can come to appreciate this scene like I do. It is honestly way better than people give it credit for. If you like what you saw here and you want to see more, like and subscribe. What did you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Ted Bennett.